Hey, what's going on, guys? Matthew Decker, Leveraged Wealth Management. I hope that you're doing well today. I'm shooting this video because I was reading an article earlier this week, and the article is titled Rethink. Well, what is it retitled? I got it here. It's titled "Now is the Time to Rethink Retirement Plan Conventional Wisdom." And I thought, oh, sounds interesting. Let's give it a read. And as I read through this article, I mean, it's a pretty good article. I don't really have anything bad to say about it, but the upshot is basically you should transition away from defined contribution plans. And a defined contribution plan would be a 401k, a 403b, a SEP, simple plans where the amount of money going in is what is defined versus a defined benefit plan, which would be a pension, basically, to make things easy. So the point of this article is, hey, defined contribution plans are leaving people with less money than they used to have when everybody had pensions. And I thought, oh, well, that's kind of a letdown. That's kind of a bummer because, of course, I didn't need that article to tell me that. But I thought that I would shoot this video because I do agree with the title, which is now's the time to rethink conventional retirement plan wisdom. Because I think there's some things that retirement plans miss, and I think there's some things that a lot of financial planners miss when it comes to retirement. But what I first want to do is I just want to share my screen with you real quick and want to go through, basically what this article is trying to say and talk about why things are the way that they are. So what we've got here is a graph of pensions versus 401k plans. And so this goes all the way back to 1988. And this is through 2007, but the trend has essentially continued. So this is an outdated graph, but it doesn't really matter for these purposes. And the red line is going to be your pension plans. And so you can see that about 63% of full-time workers had pension plans back in 1988. And as we move forward, you can see what happens. There's a crossover point in about 1994, where what employers started doing was moving away from pension plans because they're expensive and moving towards defined contribution plans, which is going to be like a 401k plan. And the main reason that they started doing that was not only, number one, is it cheaper, but it actually moves the risk of retirement from the company who's providing the pension to the employee who has to basically determine how much they're going to contribute towards their plan every paycheck or every month or every year. And so it shifts the risk from the company to you. And that risk has continued to shift to the point where, back in 2007, 32% of people had pensions. And really this 32% is largely made up of government employees because most governments still provide pensions. In fact, I believe all of them do at this point. So that 32% of full-time workers in the workforce for 15 years or more, that 32% is almost all government workers. And so that made me think of another article that I had read recently, and I'll just put it up here. Does your state have a pension problem? So I was reading through this article a couple weeks ago, and it's really interesting because there's only 2 states that have fully funded their pension programs, and that would be South Dakota and Wisconsin. And if you go to the worst states on the list, the worst 5 would be Illinois, Kentucky, Connecticut, Alaska, and Kansas. All of them have funded less than 60% of their pension plan, meaning they're at least 40% underfunded. And so it just goes to show that while I agree with the title of this article, it's time to rethink retirement plan conventional wisdom, I don't necessarily think that moving back to pension plans is the answer, because even our government pension plans are underfunded. And who has confidence that they will be fully funded, in 10, 15, 20 years? I don't know. I mean, that seems like a roll of the dice. And so what I did is I put together a list of some things that I think we need to rethink when it comes to conventional retirement plan wisdom. So the first thing that I think we need to rethink when it comes to conventional plan wisdom is this idea of deferring taxes. Now, we used to hear defer, defer, defer. Defer your taxes, delay your taxes, push them out as long as you can, pay them later. And I'm not sure that that conventional wisdom holds true anymore. What I've done is I've got a snapshot of our top marginal US tax rates going all the way back to 1913. This is through 2018. And you can see that our top marginal rates are essentially as low as they've ever been, unless you want to count this little blip on the radar in the early 1930s or from the late 1920s to the early 1930s. We are literally in one of the lowest top marginal rates of all time. And so if you are still in the mindset, the conventional wisdom of I'm going to defer as many taxes as I possibly can, that could work if you don't plan on having a huge income coming from those deferred accounts. But if you're a high earner who maybe can't qualify for Roth IRAs, you've already got quite a bit of money saved up in your tax deferred accounts, there's a really good likelihood that when you get to retirement, maybe that's 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, you're going to be in a much higher tax rate 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road than you are right now. And that's not me saying that. There's a whole bunch of people out there that have essentially said we need to double tax rates over time in order to make up for the debt that we've accumulated, our future unfunded liabilities, which is Social Security, Medicare, interest on debt, our largest line items as a government, the things that we're on the hook to pay in the form of, pseudo pension plans. That's basically what Social Security is. And so shock or surprise, it's underfunded, just like most of the other pensions in this country. I think that deferring taxes as just a conventional wisdom, push the button, that's what we got to do because that's the best thing to do. I'm not so sure that that's the best thing to do anymore, especially if you're in a high tax bracket already. Because the one thing that we know is that the government is going to tax the people who make the most money more than they're going to tax the people who don't make as much money. That's just the way that our system works. It's a tiered tax system where the more you make, the more you pay. It's always going to work that way. We're not going to a flat tax. And so because of that, I think, man, if you're deferring taxes in this tax rate environment, I think that you're, maybe needing to rethink that. I think there's a very high likelihood that taxes get back up to this level. And if that happens, you don't want the majority of your money sitting in tax deferred accounts. So number one, we probably need to rethink this idea of defer as many taxes as possible. The second thing that I think we need to rethink is maybe a little bit more controversial. And so I'm not going to state it as a fact. I'm going to state it as a question. And that is, stop your 401k? Question mark. Should you stop funding your 401k? Now that sounds like blasphemy, right? Let's be honest. Sounds like I've gone way out on a limb here, but I'm not so sure that I have. Should you stop funding your 401k? Because what is the 401k? The 401k is a glorified IRA with a higher contribution limit and limited options. An IRA is essentially a sheet of paper that you staple to the front of any investment. That's essentially what it is. It just tells the IRS, hey, this is a tax deferred vehicle. It's a cover sheet for your investment. Boom, tax deferred. That's an IRA. A 401k is essentially the same thing. The difference is you do it through your employer. You have higher contribution limits. The employer has the opportunity to match, but almost every single 401k is going to have limited investment options. In fact, I would say just about everyone does. Limited investment options in terms of what you can choose to invest in inside the 401k. So I say, should you stop funding the 401k? Well, maybe. Do you have a match? Let's put some more questions in here. Do you have a match? What is your match? Are you maxing it out? Are you max funding your 401k? What's your current balance in your 401k? If you're 5 years away from retirement and you've got a couple $1,000,000 in your 401k and you have next to no money sitting outside of your retirement accounts, should you stop funding your 401k? Probably. And you should probably start putting that money into after-tax accounts that you have more access to. And that brings me to point number 3, which goes along with, should you stop funding your 401k? I don't know. It's a question that you need to ask. My opinion is you need after-tax money. And the reason that I say that you need after-tax money is because so many people today are trying their best to reduce debt, live below their means, save as much money as they can, and retire early, which is awesome. I love that. And I love helping people achieve early retirement. And when we say early retirement, sometimes we're talking late 40s, but a lot of times it's, 50 to 55, early retirement, pre-60 for sure. Well, if all of your money is sitting in tax-deferred accounts, IRAs, 401ks, 403b, SEP, Simple, TSP, annuities, it's very difficult to retire early because the only money that you really have access to if you retire before 59 and a half without paying a 10% penalty is your current employer's 401k if you separate from service after age or at age 55 or later, and you don't roll that 401k into an IRA. So it has to stay in the 401k. You can have access to that money. But everything else in a tax-deferred qualified retirement account, you don't have access to without paying taxes plus a 10% penalty. And so when we talk about rethinking this conventional retirement planning wisdom, unless you're somebody who wants to work until you're 70 years old so that you can defer Social Security to 70, get the maximum payout, and then you're going to ride off into the sunset, fine. Maybe you can defer as much money as you want. Maybe you don't care about taxes. Maybe you should max out your 401k every single year and not worry about after-tax money. But if you're one of those people who thinks, I'd kind of like to stop working early if I can, then I would say you are going to need some after-tax money for liquidity and for the ability to avoid those 10% penalties and fill the gap, between when you retire, let's say it's at 55, fill the gap between 55 and 59 and a half when you get access to your qualified accounts. The last thing that I think we need to rethink, and I realize this is a short list, but this last thing is really more of a mindset than anything else. I think we all need to come to grips with the fact that the responsibility for retirement and the risk for retirement over the last 20 to 30 years has slowly but surely been shifted to the employee, to us. There's not some big company that's going to make sure we have a big fat pension and a Rolex watch. The government is not so trustworthy when it comes to Social Security payments. They keep moving the retirement age back. Our COLA adjustment's going to be available. We don't know. We know it's underfunded. But we need to come to grips with the fact that responsibility for retirement and the risk for retirement has been shifted to us. And because of that, we need to make sure that we're doing a good job planning for retirement. So we'll just say the risk has moved. It's no longer a pension that's backing retirement. It is now defined contribution, which is essentially you choose how much you want to save. And because the risk has shifted from the company to the employee, we now need to be super intentional about having a plan for things like healthcare costs, guaranteed money. We need a tax plan, and we really need an income distribution plan. And that is, where's your money going to come from? Which vehicle are you going to draw income from? In what order? At what time? And how's that going to be taxed? And is that money subject to market risk or is it guaranteed? We have to accept that the risk of retirement has shifted to us. And because of that, it means that we have to engage in a lot more planning. So if you need help engaging in some of that planning, we'd love to be there to help you. You can go to our website, leveragewm.contact us, and we can get in touch with you and just talk about where you are today, where you want to be, how we're going to get there. We'll talk about taxes. We'll talk about market risk. We'll answer the question, hey, should you stop funding your 401k? That depends. Maybe, maybe not. If you have a Roth 401k at work and you're not using it, man, we got to get you in the Roth 401k at work. So there's all kinds of things that we'll discuss. But most importantly, I think we all just have to accept that pensions are gone. And even the pensions that are still here, there are problems with those pensions. Some of them go away. A lot of them are underfunded. And we have to accept the responsibility of retirement and go after it with intentionality and make sure that we're able to live the life that we want to live on our own terms when we want to do it. You want to retire early? Well, then there's some planning things that we need to make sure that are in order. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. I would love for you to subscribe to the channel, click the bell so you get notified when we update new content weekly. The goal of this channel is really to help you make good decisions with your money. There's so many conflicting evidence and conflicting advice out there in the financial planning world. And the reason that we get on here on YouTube and talk about some of these concepts is because we are laser focused on making sure that you have all the facts and make good decisions with your money. So we'd love to help if we can help in that content. I'll put our website, how you can get in contact with us in the description below, and I'll link it above here. But let me know what other videos you want me to tackle in the future. Hopefully this has been helpful. This is Matthew Decker, Leveraged Wealth, signing off until next time. Take care.